Welcome to Knife Chats. If you like this video, please take a moment to leave a comment. Thank you.
A while back I did a video featuring this knife, which is one of the very early Camillus official Cub Scout knives, and I believe this is like the first pattern that was ever made. And as you can tell here, the knife is not in the world's greatest shape. Well, I recently found one that's in a little bit better shape, so I thought I would do a real quick update and show that knife and compare that knife to the early Imperial Cub Scout knives. But before I do that, I thought I'd share my experiences as a Cub Scout. And as a young boy, my experiences were very short-lived. I managed to be a Cub Scout for less than a year, and that's primarily because when we were signed up for it, my brother and I were both signed up for it. He was 3 years older than I was, and he just wasn't as interested in it. So my parents pulled us both out of it, and so as much as I enjoyed it, it really didn't matter too much. So I was in the Cub Scouts for about 6 to 8 years as a young boy, and so I never got past the wolf phase, and didn't really earn much. But then as an adult, when my children came of age, when my oldest son became a Cub Scout, I was actually the Cub Master, and that's why I have these Cub Master patches. And the first one here is the one that would have been used in the 1950s and maybe into the 1960s. And you see it just says Cub Scouts Bsa with a green background and the wolf on the top, and it doesn't identify you as a Cub Master or anything. The only way you know you're the Cub Master is because of the green background. There was also an assistant Cub Master, and the difference is instead of in white threads, it was in yellow threading. And then you have, after that, because of the confusion, they added the word Cub Master above the wolf's head. And this patch was used in the 60s going, I think, into the 70s as with the green background Cub Master. And again, the assistant Cub Master's patch had gold trim instead of white. The patch that I had as a Cub Master is this one here. Very clear, and now you're looking much more like the Boy Scouts, and much more like the Cub Scouts with the blue and the gold. And Cub Master here, the assistant Cub Master, is still in yellow. Another thing I have here that might be of interest to some people is a very early Cubs Bsa ring, and this is a size 8. I will show you that it says down in there that this is actually sterling silver. When I got it, I'll show you an inset picture of what it looked like. It was dark gray and very tarnished, and it took a little brasso and about 30 seconds to make the ring look really nice. And the reason I'm showing you this stuff is because a few people have asked about some of the different memorabilia that you see in the background on my videos, so that's why I'm showing you this stuff. So there's a nice Cubs Bsa ring, and this is a size 8. The only finger it's going to fit on with me is my pinky, so now you know my pinky is a size 8. But pretty cool ring, and because it just says Cubs Bsa, that means it is from pre-1948, so it's somewhere between 1930 and probably World War II. Let's go on to the knives. So this was that short line Camillus knife that I first talked about. That's in another video. I'll link to the video. You can see the short line there on it, and it's in really, really bad shape. But I recently picked up another one, and it is here. The difference on the two is this one is very much pocket worn, if you can tell from the scales. So I might want to swap the scales on these two. I don't know, or I might just keep them as is. But the blade on this one is now full. And notice it does have the half stop. The only problem with this blade is there's a little nick right over here, if you notice, right down here. But otherwise, it's a nice sharp blade, carbon steel, fairly good shape. You can't see it too much in here, but if you look real hard, you can actually see where the diamond was on the Cub Scout blade edge. And right there you do see the short line Camillus. And the important thing on here is the screwdriver and the difference between this screwdriver and the Imperial screwdriver. Okay, so let's pick up the Imperial, which this is one of the early ones. And you notice it has the very long screwdriver. Compared to the Camillus, it's quite a bit substantially larger. And if we notice, this is a later Camillus screwdriver. This one is longer than that one. So the earliest screwdriver is a different size than the later screwdrivers used on the official Cub Scout knives. And the Camillus one is definitely much smaller than the ones you find on the Imperials. A few other differences between the two, between the Imperial and the Camillus, is the Imperial, as you can see here, like I mentioned, it's one of the early ones. If we can get it to focus there. Providence, Rhode Island. So that's the early one that, this is the tank stamp that was used in 1952. And the knife does not have a half stop, which is different than any of the Camillus knives. None of the Imperial knives have a half stop. But even this very early Camillus knife has a half stop on the main blade. But the cool thing about this knife compared to the older one that I had is, well, for one thing, it's got a full blade, really good working half stop, good snap to it. The can opener opens, the lock is in good shape, the brass liner lock works really well. The only reason there's not a good snap with the screwdriver closing is because the liner lock is rubbing against it. The punch does catch, but it doesn't catch really well, but it does catch there. I might have to bend this out a little bit, but it's got a decent snap closing, so it's pretty good. Brass liners worked out really well, and the handles have not shrunk too badly, and it's all really nice and tight. But like I mentioned, definite pocket wear on this knife compared to this the other scales on the one that's missing the shield. And speaking of shields, if you notice, it is nearly identical to the shield you see on the Imperial. I mean, downright almost exactly the same. The only difference probably is from years of wear. So they were definitely using the exact same shield in the early Camillus and early Imperial knives. And as you can also tell, they both still have the black handles. So there you have it. Very first Imperial official Cub Scout knife and the very first official Cub Scout knives by Camillus, which I do believe were the very first official Cub Scout knives. I'll post a link over to the video that talks about the transition period between Imperial and Camillus in the descriptions below. But I hope you enjoyed seeing my latest addition to my official Cub Scout knives. A beautiful knife that was probably made sometime between 1948 and 1951 or 52, based on the Camillus tank stamp there. And this knife is in better shape than some of the knives I've seen from the 60s and 70s. So really a terrific find.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Knife Chats, and if you did, please like and share it with your friends. Comments are always welcome. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode of Knife Chats is up online. Thanks again. Hope to see you soon.